And now to my final story. As the year draws to a close, it's a time for reflection and a look ahead to new possibilities in leadership. In this throwback conversation, award-winning leadership expert and trustee of the Royal African Society, Obi James, shares insights from her book, Let Go Leadership. Obi offers a fresh perspective on building trust, fostering collaboration, and empowering teams. Lessons that are especially valuable as leaders prepare to navigate the opportunities and challenges of the new year. Obi James, it's an absolute pleasure having you on Channels Business Global. Quite interesting because we speak often, but we've never spoken on the show. So I'm really happy to have you here, particularly because of this time of the year. As we get to the end of the year, a lot of people start reflecting on what's happened, in the past few months. Of course, everybody's looking forward to New Year's resolutions. We're going to talk about your book, Let Go Leadership. I think the title is quite intriguing. Can you explain what letting go actually means in the context of leadership and why it's particularly important for leaders in the world's dynamic business environment?
Thank you very much, Juliana. You're very right. We haven't actually done this before, even though we've known each other for such a long time. So Let Go Leadership is actually covers or focuses on letting go, as you mentioned. And letting go means shifting from this traditional control and command leadership approach to one of empowerment. And one of the things that we find with leaders, particularly as we progress, and as you said, in today's climate, is that there's a tendency to hold on to power. And what a lot of leaders don't recognize is actually what that is doing is holding our people back and holding the future leaders back and making us less equipped for the future. So letting go is actually about sharing power. Doesn't mean letting go of authority. It doesn't mean letting go of shared responsibility. It doesn't mean letting go of accountability. But what it means is actually creating an inclusive environment that allows us to develop the brilliant pipeline of talent that we have within our organizations.
Let's put this in the Nigerian context. You schooled in Nigeria. Of course, you're a trustee of the Royal African Society, so you're familiar with the complex nature of the Nigerian workplace. I'm sure you remember a couple of years ago, Yes, Daddy was trending online, a recording of Peter Obi. And one of the reasons why I think it captured people is because in meetings, people are like, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, 3 bags full, yes, sir. But sometimes that can stifle innovation, that kind of, the hierarchy and women having to know, their place in the workplace. What lessons from your book can help leaders navigate that kind of uncertain environment?
I think Nigeria is a very complex, I'd almost say world. And as you mentioned, I grew up in Nigeria. I actually grew up in a hospital, not as a patient, but as the child of the doctors that ran the hospital in Anambra State. So I schooled in Nigeria, and I have been doing a lot of work with Nigerians and in Nigeria recently. And one of the things I see in the work I do in our country is that there is a tendency for leaders to feel like they have to have it all and know it all and be in charge. And that feeds what you describe, which is the yes, my, yes, sir, people waiting for direction. The impact of that is that we've got leaders that are extremely overwhelmed in an environment where vulnerability is not celebrated or welcomed, and people are holding on to strength and showing that everyone's doing well, everyone's doing great, leaders are brilliant at what they're doing without challenges. And then the consequences is we've got younger people, future leaders, talented team members and teams who are sitting waiting for instructions because they're not empowered to co-create the successes that we need. I think what's even more complex with Nigeria, as we all know, is that we have a young population. 70% of our population is made up of young people. And we do need to change our approach to leadership in order to be able to harness the talent and the diversity and the wisdom, creativity, and innovation that these future leaders have to offer. Let Go Leadership flips that.
Absolutely. We know we're all pretty exhausted now. As I said, we're getting towards the end of the year. And a lot of leaders, particularly, I would say, African women, we often feel as if we need to put on this facade of being, always strong, always in control. Yes, we can do everything, drop the kids here, burn the midnight oil, you feel exhausted. What advice would you give to female leaders who are feeling that they just cannot do it all, but they're scared, because when you're a leader, trust is an issue, isn't it? Being able to hand over your intellectual property. I feel like there is a lot of fear, for dropping the mask and just saying, look, I'm exhausted. Can I have some help? But it's important to ask, isn't it?
It is extremely important. And as we know, women and mothers and carers do need to take care of themselves and of their mental health. And one of the things I say, particularly as a parent, which is the biggest, one of the biggest forms of leadership, is that we need to normalize the challenges that you describe. And we need to be able to bring our children and our future leaders into our world for them to understand that they don't have to be it all and they don't have to do it all. And it's okay to ask for help, because actually there's a lot of burnout. We're finding that particularly in our African communities with women in a lot of cases, because everybody else seems to be doing really well. Yeah. People are dressed up, people are glamorous, people are, the social
got the wig on, the lashes on, lipstick on.
The lashes on, the makeup, and actually behind the scenes we're struggling, and it's really complicated. And I worry that we're not letting our children understand that actually there are challenges with creating this life. There are challenges with leadership, but actually we can navigate them effectively. And to navigate them effectively, we need to come together more like we've been doing.
I feel quite fortunate because I may have had an early copy of your book in the summer. Since then, you've travelled the world. You've been in New York, you've been in Scotland, delivering speeches and courses to leaders on the C-suite. What have you learnt? And what advice would you give to anybody who is watching, possibly on a C-suite or aspiring to be there, but it's just kind of stuck in the rut? First, tell me what you've learned since writing the book and speaking with people, but also just give us some hope to end the show on.
I will try, no pressure. One of the biggest lessons I actually learned in writing the book, which was initially called Get Out of Your Team's Way, is actually that our leaders need us to look at them with a lot more compassion than we do. Yeah. There is a tendency for us to think that leaders know and are equipped to lead in a different way, in a way that works for the societies that we live in today and the challenges that we face in today's climate. But actually, our leaders are leading how they were taught how to lead. And so that they're copying what they see, and oftentimes they don't get the feedback. So when I started writing the book, one of the things that I changed very quickly following some of my travels, but also interviewing leaders across the world, is actually understanding that there is a need for self-leadership. Yes. And that self-leadership became the first part of the book. So if you look at the book, or when you look at the book, and I know you have, you will find that part one is self-leadership, and then part two looks at shared leadership. And then the third part is looking at sustaining leadership. And that's because I recognize that our own leaders need to do a lot of work first to equip them to be able to share leadership, to equip them to be able to let go, because it's very vulnerable. If I've created my successes based on problem solving, based on knowing the answers and having the answers, and surrounded by people that say, yes, my yes, sir, that's where my comfort zone is. So it's a huge ask to suddenly say to me, look, you need to become more coach-like. You need to ask more questions. You need to listen better. You need to recognize that actually you don't have all the answers, and that's okay, because our future generation and our future leaders come with a lot of creativity, come with a lot of innovation, and come with a lot of diversity, and we can co-create the future that we need. So one of the things I found in writing the book, and actually one of the things that came out of the book, is that we need to help the leaders to be able to let go. And that's what forms a huge part of the program that we run, which is called Leader as Coach. So we actually train leaders and develop leaders to be able to get comfortable and skilled at letting go without feeling like they're letting go of control completely, or authority, or responsibility, or of their successes.
Here, let go, let God. Thank you, Obi James. Of course, you wear several hats: corporate consultant, leadership coach, accountability coach, trustee at the Royal African Society, and of course, author of Let Go Leadership. Really fascinating insights there from you. Thank you so much, Obi James.
Thank you so much, Juliana. And I look forward to seeing you when we get together again soon.
Thank you.